Welcome to Believe in Chargers. Good to be back. As a bit of a hiatus there, I will bear the brunt of the incoming on that one. Low, been a little bit busy dealing with my college football. I should say college basketball season has been a little bit busy, so I apologize, everybody. Low's been ready to go, and I've been the guilty party of trying to get this thing squared away, flying all over to these college towns in Birmingham and Austin and West Lafayette and Bloomington, trying to figure things out as the NCAA tournament is upon us, which before we get going is probably just a good reminder to knock this out now. Hey, Bet Online, world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting in 2025. Seasoned fan, first-time bettor, Bet Online is your spot. The largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC. Bet Online continues to be your number one sport betting source. Every three-pointer, hat trick, Bet Online's got you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. So great to see you, Lo. It's been a while. Hopefully you're doing great.
It has been. Hey, you know what, though? You get to travel the world, travel abroad, state to state. You don't even know what state you're in. One day you're in New Orleans. The next day you're Louisiana, different towns, different cities. But I imagine it's fun, but at the same sense, I can imagine it could be pretty tiring. But college basketball, man, to be able to watch and call the basketball games, it's up speed. I was going to ask you, what's the biggest difference when you're talking about college basketball compared to the football? Is it a lot easier or more because it's a lot faster?
You mean just like in terms of basketball versus football?
Right. As far as the
totally different. It's a play-by-play game, so it's all me. For the most part, I'm trying to get out of the way as best as I can so my man Robert Ory can get his analysis in there. Whereas football, I'm just, I'm kind of along for the ride. Daniel Jeremiah is breaking it all down, explaining what's going on and what these people are listening to and how these plays are making, forward gains or losses. So, yeah, it's a big play-by-play sport. So all I'm doing is trying to figure out what I can leave out. Really, it's like I don't want to include every pass, every pump fake, every, drive. So it's not just a barrage of my annoying voice over and over and over again. But I saw your guy. I was in Texas, in Austin, for the Texas-Alabama game, Rodney Terry, former basketball coach at Fresno State. I'm sure you know Coach.
Absolutely. You should have told him I said hello, man. You should say that. I work with your boy, Neal. Rodney Terry's a great guy. He's come over to the house for dinner. We hung out and had some great times together. He did a great job at Fresno. I was surprised that he ended up leaving, but Ryan Terry's a great man. He's done a great job with, having less, not necessarily the best athletes, but you give that guy a team, and he can definitely compete. So an awesome coach, and I'm glad you have the opportunity to hang out with you.
Yeah, great guy. Let's use that as a springboard here and stick with Fresno State, Low, because I don't think anyone's going to trade for Davante Adams, not with a $35 million salary that you'd be taking on. It's a base salary, so it's not signing bonus. Like, you trade for him, you are taking that on. And I think the next year is another $36 million. So he's 33 years old. I don't envision anyone's going to trade for him. That leads me to think the Jets are probably just going to have to release him as they're going to tear this whole thing down and get restarted. And I'm sure a 33-year-old guy that's chasing a Super Bowl is not interested in being there for a reboot. And he said he wants to be on the West Coast. And when you start breaking it down, you look at Seattle's already talking about cutting money and maybe trading DK Metcalf. You got San Francisco that's trying to figure out how to fit all these pieces in. They're talking about having to trade Deebo Samuel with this Brock Purdy contract coming. You got the Rams, who are moving Cooper Kupp's $29 million because they got money issues that they got to figure out in this Matthew Stafford situation that has to get resolved. I don't think he wants to go back to the Raiders. I could be wrong there, but that would be weird when they have no quarterback and they're trying to figure that thing out. I mean, it really points to the Chargers kind of being the one team. He's a Fresno State guy. I know you know him well. Just kind of your thoughts on how that piece would fit with this team to go with Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston and whoever they might be drafting.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I love Davante Adams, a great guy, and he's a good man. He's a good person. It's just tough at times because of your frustration. Sometimes you're like, okay, I understand you want to win a Super Bowl, and I totally get that part of it. But you know, so at times, if you just kind of say, okay, I'm just going to wait this out. I'm going to go put my head down. I'm going to be the outlier with the Raiders or wherever I'm at, and I'm going to outperform. I'm just going to play at such a high level that people are going to say, oh, my goodness, look at this guy. He doesn't quit. He's on a losing team, and he took it through adversity. Now you're in a situation that your value's higher. When you demand a trade, or you kind of, I don't say quit, but you understood the situation with the Raiders, so you said, I got to get out of here, and then you go to maybe even a worse situation. It hurts your value. But the great thing, like you just alluded to, kind of come full circle, it's great for the Chargers because now they're going to get a still guy that can play at a very, very high level. Reminds me of a Keenan Allen, but a little bit more crisper and maybe, kind of more fluid. But you got to realize you talk about missing a Keenan Allen. Now you having a guy that you can bring back in the fold that can be reliable, consistent, and he could help Ladd because Ladd has shown that he can be a true one or number two. Yeah. Doesn't matter. He's shown that he has the speed. He can separate. He can do everything. So Ladd, now, if you bring in a guy of that caliber and now couple that with a tight end, you got to get a tight end, a guy that's going to be consistent at that position. I think you'll have a top tier receiving core if you brought in the receiver because of the fact what Davante Adams can bring to the table.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you mentioned it. And that's the one thing about Davante's. Look, typically you hit 30 and as a receiver, it's almost guaranteed that because it's an explosive athletic position.
Yep.
Davante last year, think about the quarterbacks. That guy was, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell,
bomb.
And then he goes to the Jets, and that's just a complete circus as it's falling apart. And then you look down and you're like, okay, he's got 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns with that adversity. And on top of that, then you go into the advanced statistics and you see the contested catch percentage and the yak and the outlier numbers. Like he is an elite receiver against man coverage. Elite. So you can put him out at the X, and Herbert and how freaking accurate he is. Davante Adams, a guy that's going to be exactly where you want him to be at the exact time you want him to be there. And, that's the thing with Ladd. Like you said, look, Ladd's a one, man. Ladd was drawing double coverage. Ladd is drawn triple coverage in that Houston game because that's the only guy they were afraid of. And he plays the slot and still winning. And that's the thing with Keenan. Like all the people are like, oh, bring back Keenan. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But just keep Ladd in the slot. Can he play outside? Yes. Can he win outside? Yes. He is devastating in the slot. Keenan cannot play outside. Keenan is a slot. He's a big slot, but he is a slot receiver. Davante
can play outside.
He's going to play the X, and that can then put Q at the Z, and he can do Q things where he's not worried about getting downfield. So, and I bring it all up, and we start here because you would have thought that we start with T. Higgins because that's what people are all excited about, but it certainly sounds like as the franchise tag window, it just opened yesterday. We're doing this on Thursday, Feb 19, or Wednesday, Feb 19. It just opened yesterday on Tuesday. It sounds like T's going to get tagged, and they're going to try to figure this out, and they're going to try to keep their quarterback happy and sort through how they might be able to get Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins all on contracts where they're making $30 million plus a year and keep that thing together out there. So that's why you kind of shift. Okay, now it's Godwin. It's Chris Godwin. It's Davante Adams when he gets released. It's Darius Slayton. If you just kind of want that one-trick pony to take the top off and open things up underneath. And then it's the draft that you start talking about. If T-Mac is going to slide a little bit, would the Chargers be willing to trade up to get a guy that reminds a lot of people of Mike Evans? Just that huge body, incredibly fluid athlete, exceptional speed. I think a lot of it will depend on what he runs when he gets to the combine. I'll be out there next week, but he's a guy that's got a profile of a top 10 pick, of a top 5 pick, really. So it's an interesting thing that came up the last couple days, and man, it feels like it can really line up for it to make sense for the Bolts.
I think you're absolutely 1,000% correct. Davante Adams would fit the Chargers so uniquely, and it'd be great because, like you said, he could play the Z, and he is a true outside receiver, can kill against press coverage. You can't. He's so quick off the line. He still has explosive, and he's hard to cover. And he knows how his body control, position, knowing how to catch the ball. And now you put Ladd in slot and let Ladd be Ladd. I'm telling you, this would work for the Chargers. I'm telling you, it would have Herbert with Herbert. Like you just alluded to earlier, Herbert, what he can do with the ball. Yeah. If you have 2 receivers of that stature, and now you throw a tight end in there, now you have other guys. it would have this offense even cooking at a higher level. And yeah, we know you definitely got to approach the running back position too, because you got to have more consistency at the running back. But if you can get a guy now instead of 35 million, now you say it's incentive based. You can tell. And how do you get a guy of that stature to say, I'm going to pass up a lot of money because he wants to win? You went on a team that went to the playoffs. You see what Harbaugh's doing. He's tired of being on. Think about where he's been. He's been on quarterbacks that are either on the downside. Aaron Rodgers is on the downside. He can't. Right. He's not Aaron anymore. But Hall of Famer, first ballot, unbelievable quarterback, MVP. And then you're talking about Gardner Minshew and the guys that you talked about. Think about now. For the last several years, you've been begging for the ball. You've been wanting the guy to be able to get you the ball. Now you're coming over with a top 5 or top 7 quarterbacks in Herbert. If you're Davante Adams, you should be licking your chops and say, not only do I not necessarily, I know how I can get the money, because now you can go incentive based. You can have a bunch of incentives, and you're going to be hungry because you're going to have opportunities to catch the ball here with the Chargers. You're talking about getting back to the West. What better place? Who has it better than us?
Exactly. I think, the numbers obviously are going to be part of it. And if look, I don't know whether or not the Chargers were interested in T. Higgins, knowing that number was going to be north of 30 million. They're going to have, depending on what they do with Joey and what happens with, right now he's 36 million. If you move on from him, you're looking at an extra 25 million. You've got to re-sign Rashawn Slater. That thing's going to be sniffing 30 million, if not more. So that basically just cancels each other out. In the case of Davante, if he's being released and he's losing $70 million, what does that number look like? Is it, like you said, can you do a $28 million number and, right in that range because or is he just looking for the highest number? I just don't think, if you're looking to the West Coast, right, you're going to have to get creative, I think. And I don't know, I should look it up exactly what the Rams salary cap situation is, because I know for a fact that the what's it called? The 49ers and the Seahawks don't have money. They do not have money.
In Arizona. So if you think about it, here's a unique thing. You're talking about Davante Adams, and everyone's saying
the Rams got $37 million. So the Rams that's what they have. The Chargers have triple that or double that.
Yeah, and they're getting rid of Kupp. They're not going to. That you're going to be looking at the same.
That'll open up more room. Yeah.
Right. So I think that the Chargers would be it'd be a great landing spot. But I think if you talk about a guy like that, if you still believe he can perform, you can look at this great site that it's called Underdog. Underdog is a great kind of like fantasy football where you can look at a player and say, hey, he's going to outperform his expectations. And you just say, look, this guy's going to have over 70 yards. You take the over. You say, I got Davante Adams. He can do it. It's simple. And all you got to use is the code BOLT. That's it. Use the code BOLT. You can go out there. You can play Underdog. It's simple. You can got LeBron James. Think about basketball. You want to basketball, LeBron James over 23. Just pick him. And you know what? And you win. It's instant. So it's easy. It's easy to play. And you got to use the word code. Use the code word, just BOLT. Very simple. And we know they got a big guy named Joel. What he does on the golf course is absolutely amazing. You can use him. How many shots? What strokes? How many pars? How many birdies? It's simple. So that's another thing that you can use. I knew I could slide that in there, money, and make it smooth.
Always low. Always low. Give it to them again. What do they got to do? What do they got to use?
Just use the code BOLT. That's right. BOLT. Bolts. Bolt up, baby.
Love it. So that's wide receivers. I'm looking at the Rams have a lot more space than I thought. So they could be, maybe that's what they're doing with Cooper Kupp, is moving on from him so they can get that money for Davante Adams. So that very well could end up being their chief competition. I'm thinking of who they have to sign. It's really just the Matthew Stafford situation. That's what it's going to come down to, is are they moving, and what happens if they move? Yesterday Adam Schefter shared that, that if things get sideways with Stafford, that Aaron Rodgers is intrigued by the possibility of playing for McVay and a system he's comfortable in, because he played with Matt LaFleur for all those years from that Shanahan tree. And so that could be interesting if they move on from Stafford, get some draft picks, do a short deal with Aaron Rodgers and try to make a run with him. And now his best friend Davante is going from, the Jets all the way out to the Rams. So anyway, that's for
Do
Joe
you
Ortiz
think?
and the front office to sort out.
Do you think when you think about if you're getting rid of if you look at the Chargers, who are the Chargers getting rid of to go after Davante? No one. No
Right,
one
well,
of that.
maybe Joey Bosa.
Right, but I'm talking about like in that same position wise. If you look at Cup though, compare Cup and you look at Davante Adams. Yeah, Davante may be a little bit better, but it's not. Is it that much? We know he may be a little bit better. You look at his stats, we get that.
Yeah.
But is he that much better? So why would you why would you trade or move a guy in Cup to bring in Davante? I think that they're going to go in a completely different way, whether it's quarterback, whether it's bolster their offensive line, whether it's get a run. I don't see the Rams going after a high-end receiver like Davante because you have one that is very, very capable, and you wouldn't get rid of Cooper Kupp if that's the case.
Fair point. Yeah, fair point. I mean, I know he's dealing with injuries, but he's making $29 million. Like we said, Davante's making 35. Maybe they're just concerned about the health and the fact that he's missing games. And so you replace that vet with another vet. You got Puka Nacua, Tyler Higbee, Kyron Williams. I mean, you have a team that can win a Super Bowl in the Rams. You think about that fourth down and Jalen Carter flying through that line, forcing the incomplete pass. I mean, that thing goes a different way, and the Rams are hosting the NFC Championship game. So you certainly have the pitch of we can win, and we can win right now, Davante. But that to me would be the sort of the one team that might be the chief competition for the Chargers for Adams. So let's move on from that to running back. Really outside of J.K. Dobbins, bringing him back, which I hope they do. There's Najee Harris. No, thank you. There's really nothing free agency wise there. You got some offensive line. It seems like that's a spot where they could spend some money, particularly at center. People are talking about Ryan Kelly, about Dahlman in Atlanta. Seems to be the highest rated center out there. The one thing I'll say is I know this team really, really likes Bradley Bozeman. I know that maybe the performance wasn't quite where you wanted it to be. You kind of knew what you were getting. He's a guy that's pretty darn good moving forward, struggles a little bit moving backwards. But I know they love him in the room. They love him as a captain of this team. So I'd be really surprised if he's not back. And that kind of makes that particular position interesting in free agency.
What kind of trade value does he? What type of trade value does he have, Money?
Who's that? Bozeman? Well, he's free agent. He was just on a 1 year, $1 million deal. So it's just whether or not you want to bring him back is kind of the deal there. So, I think they're going to be I would assume they're going to be in they're going to be in the market for a guard, for certain. No doubt about that, just because of Trey and the fact that he's a $9 million salary. That's fine at right tackle. You got to be a damn good guard if you're making $9 million, because I don't think they're going to chase someone like Trey Smith and a guy who's going to be commanding $25 million to be a left guard or a right guard. If you want to move Zion and put Trey over at left guard, I just don't see that happening. I think that's too rich probably for what they want to do, even though he's young and he's really good. So I think it would be kind of that next tier of guards that would be available. So that to me is where they'll go shopping. Could they shop at edge? Maybe. I think the draft is so deep at defensive tackle, so I think they're more likely to find a tackle in the first 3 rounds than in free agency. Could they shop for a corner? Yeah, we've talked about it. DJ Reed maybe of the Jets could be interesting. So they got a lot of money. I'm looking at it right now. $65.6 million, 5th most in the NFL is what Spotrac's got them at. So, and that's before now. Like I said, re-sign Khalil Mack, re-sign Rashawn Slater. Probably going to want to bring back Poona Ford, Tier Tart, J.K. Dobbins. I think a lot of that's going to go to their own players, and that's something Coach Harbaugh talked about. We want to try to keep this thing together. We like this group, so I think you got to figure that into the calculus as well.
You do, and unfortunately, some of those guys you're not going to be able to bring back. I think you've got to. You look at the middle when you're talking about center guards. You have to get better. At times you saw Herbert off his spot because someone's push and break through in the middle. You've got your tackles. What are you going to do in that middle to help solidify that for quarterback can step up? You saw that in the Super Bowl. You saw Mahomes. Mahomes couldn't be Mahomes when you have a line that can press you from the middle. and your outside pass rushers stay in their lane, Mahomes couldn't be Houdini. They got him in the middle. When you can have, if you make sure when you're on defense and offense, if you can have push and now the quarterback can't step up or run, when you have speed rushers, think about the quarterback sees that lane and he's hitting either side. But when you got guys in that middle that can push that pocket back, the quarterback can't climb, it is a nightmare. You have to give Herbert opportunity to step up in the pocket. So you are going to spend some money to solidify whether it's the right or left side. You want from center, guard, tackle. So if you have to step up over to the left, if you're solid that way, you know where your strength's at. So I think that's going to be imperative. And I know they're going to spend some money at that guard or center without a doubt, like you're alluding to.
Yeah, I think to me, the one that just is staring at you in the face is Kevin Zeitler. Longtime Raven. They know him well. Just is coming off just a low money 1-year deal in Detroit. I think is what his deal was there. But I know he's up. He's older. He's 34. You can kind of just, and I think you need that sort of experience. Like to me, that makes sense, right? He knows the system. He's played for Greg Roman forever. He's a giant guy, 6'4", 340. You put that experience inside of Alt at that right guard. And then I think that helps Bradley Bozeman. You can help him be a little bit more effective. Makari's interesting, another Raven, just because he's a little more versatile. So, a lot of people will probably circle the name Zach Martin, arguably the best guard in the NFL, certainly of the last decade, and is in the conversation as one of the greatest ever. He's been dealing with some serious injuries. So I think that's the concern there. I'm just kind of scrolling through here. And that's kind of where I just don't see them spending the money on Trey Smith. Tevin Jenkins is interesting because he's so young and he's just coming off his rookie deal. He's just been beat to absolute hell.
Right.
I mean, he's kind of had every injury you can think of, back, foot, ankle, all that. James Daniels, no thanks. Mekhi Becton, no thanks. Someone Aaron Banks is kind of interesting. Low, San Francisco.
Yeah, Banks. You know what? He's interesting. I watched him play up close and personal. I like the effort, but at times this can be a little bit. I don't know if this is it going to be a permanent fix? No. I do like him, but I think you can get a better value. I look at this team. They are definitely going to have to upgrade there. But if you're saying money, what is number one? If you're saying offense, go 1A, 1B, one of the three. What is the three positions that if you had to put a premium and said, this is number one, we got to go here, 2, 3 in order. Where do you think this offensively needs to go?
Well, it's funny. I mean, you put offensively, and that changes everything. Because to me, it's defensive. It's interior defensive line. I mean, depending on what happens with Khalil, right? You bring Khalil back, and then immediately I'm like, okay, Khalil, Bud, Thule, find a young guy in the draft. Cool. That's fine. So interior defensive line, because everybody's free agent. Puna's free agent here. Tart's free agent. Morgan Fox is a free agent. Like all these guys are free agents. The only guys you have on the roster are Aboigbe, who barely played last year, might have played 10 snaps, 4th round pick from Alabama that they knew was a developmental piece, but they really liked the traits and and the athleticism and the build and the stature and all that. And Tito. So that's number one. You've got to get that right because as Coach Minner has said, you got to build a run wall, man, in order for this thing to work. So that's got to be, and it could be as simple as bringing back Puna, bringing back Tier, bringing back Morgan, run it back. They were great last year. But it would be kind of cool to think about, upgrading that position. To what extent, not sure. I'm kind of looking at I know you would go deep. So you got like Milton Williams after the Super Bowl. He's going to get a monster deal. I don't see that happening. But Odigizua, Onwuzurike, BJ Hill, Khalil, like to me, I look at all that and I'm like, yeah, look, if you can get Milton Williams or Odigizua and it's going to cost you a lot of money. If you can't get them, then you know what? I'm good with the guys, man. Just bring Puna back. Bring Tier back. Bring Morgan back.
You're going to bring Puna back. You're going to bring. He'll probably be the guy they overpaid for because you got, like you talked about, you got to build a wall. Khalil Mack is he likes being here. He understands. He has it good with the Chargers. Harbaugh doesn't kill him. They understand who he is. He's a leader, doesn't have to practice a lot. They know that he's going to show up in games. I think you're going to have a bargain with Khalil. But Puna, he played well for you. You got to build that wall that you're talking about.
Here's the thing, though, Lo. I think real quick on that is it depends on the market, right? So this year, the draft, I was talking to DJ as he's getting ready to do the combine for NFL Network.
Yeah.
He said it's the deepest. It is the deepest interior defensive lineman class he has ever seen.
Wow.
He's like, you're talking about getting guys. He said, in terms of like his top 100, you're talking about 20, 25 guys that you're getting what he thinks in other years could be a first-round talent in the third round at defensive tackle. So that then changed the market because teams are like, all right, do I want Milton Williams for $27 million a year, or do I just kind of dig into the draft and take advantage of what's this incredibly, Derek Harmon in the second round if he lasts. You got Shamar Turner, you've got Josh Farmer from Florida State, that people love because of his traits, and that guy could be picked up probably in the third round. Jordan Phillips from Maryland. I mean, all these dudes, and they all lit it up at the Senior Bowl as well, which helped. Like, Mason Graham's going to go top 5. Kenneth Grant's probably going to go top 15. The two guys out of Michigan, but now you got Walter Nolan, who's got a little bit of off-field stuff that people are a little, worried about, but you cannot deny the talent. Like, he is an incredible upfield defensive tackle. Like, I'm looking at these guys here on PFF as they have them ranked, and Shamar Turner, and I mean, God, dude, it's crazy.
Really? I got to get into that. I'm gonna dig into this.
That's going to change. That's going to change that's going to change the market for Puna, and you might end up being able to get him on a lower number. So that's to your question though about. So yeah, I think in free agency with all this money, one, they're going to bring their guys back. Harbaugh and Ortiz have already kind of pointed that out. So Slater's getting a huge deal. I think JK comes back, but in terms of free agency, I think that guard position that we talked about is probably number one. Guard, wide receiver, probably number one. Like I said, I think you look at Zeitler and you look at, I'm just trying to make sure we already went through it, but yeah, you look at Zeitler. I think Trey Smith is going to be too expensive. Will Fries is someone who's been mentioned that maybe they're interested in from Indianapolis. You bring him and Ryan Kelly in at center, and now you've got two guys that have played next to each other for a while here that are very comfortable with each other. You drop them in between, Alt, Zion, and Slater, and you feel pretty good about that. So that's that spot. We already went through wide receiver, in terms of Davante, and that's T. Higgins. It feels like T is going to get franchised. Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, no. Stephon Diggs, no. DeAndre Hopkins, no. Marquise Brown, no. Darius Slayton's interesting just because of the speed and how you can open things up. Keenan Allen, we mentioned, no. Deontay Johnson, I mean, how many opportunities you want to give that guy? Right. So that's, and then I think the question is tight end. DJ loves this tight end class as well. So a lot of people are penciling Colston Loveland into the Chargers at 22. DJ said he hates doing it. He's like, but it looks a lot like Travis Kelce.
Really?
So he's like, I hate doing this. But I think as the combine, as you get through the spring season, Colston Loveland's going to start shooting up the board. You saw what Brock Bowers did in Las Vegas, and what Sam Laporta means, and what, Dallas Goedert means in Philly, and Travis Kelce in Kansas City, and just how important that tight end position is. So Tyler Warren's going to go in the top 10, it feels like. Colston Loveland might not be there. And then you start looking through that second tier of Elijah Arroyo, who's crazy athletic. I know people love Mason Taylor, Jason's kid, and his athleticism. And they don't even think, DJ said he didn't even think he's going to be there in the second round. So then you start looking at the free agents. There's not a lot out there free agent wise, but they've got to get a pass catching tight end. If they're not comfortable with Stone Smart, and they're not going to put him out there to be that athlete at that position, then they're going to have to get one of these guys in the draft, or they're going to have to go out and, like I said, make a trade maybe. I know Herbert's former tight end, Juwan Johnson, is down there in New Orleans. He'll be a free agent. So maybe that's a possibility. So, yeah, that's kind of where I would put it.
You got an upgrade though. You have to. You got to get a guy that can catch the ball, that can stretch the field. If you
Yeah.
look at tight ends, you looked at look at the Raiders. I mean, horrible team, but look what a tight end can do. A tight end. Look at Gates. When you think about congratulations, Hall of Famer.
There we go. Exactly. We haven't been on since then.
Exactly. But if you think about what a tight end can do for a quarterback, it's unbelievable. It's almost, if they're that type of guy, to think about the Sterling, Shannon Sharp, think about the tight ends, Tony Gonzalez, think about the guys that you're talking about, what they meant, what they meant for great quarterbacks, Gronkowski. Yeah. So when you think about it, they're just as valuable, if not valuable, than a receiver if you got the right one. So
Hunter Henry and Justin Herbert.
Exactly. So I know they're going to have to upgrade if you want to say, hey, because you look at Kansas City, it's not over. They're always going to have a chance because they got Mahomes, but it's time. The Chargers you look at who's there. It's who's going to be armed. It's an arms race to overtake Kansas City. And right now, if you look at the Chargers in Denver, they look like, the teams, and the Chargers are a step ahead. So they have to go in and get the receiver, get a tight end. And you got a nestless running back. I know we haven't really got into it.
Let's do that real quick. Let's do that real quick then, Lo, before we get to, because I want to get to the mailbag. We've been gone for so long. Yes, we got a ton that Lindsay put together for us, so I want to get to these as well. So real quick on running back deep. That's what's going to be interesting about this number 22 pick is if Colston Loveland's there, if one of these incredible defensive tackles are sitting right there, because I think you need to upgrade athleticism at that position at defensive tackle. And then, what happens if Ashton Genty just starts sliding, and what happens if he's kind of sitting there at, if it's 15, 16, and you're like, okay, what's it going to cost us to move from 22 up a few spots? But then again, it's an incredibly deep running back class, crazy deep running back class. You could end up having Ashton Genty, Amari and Hampton. By the way, folks listening or watching on YouTube, do yourself a favor. Go look up some Amari and Hampton highlights. This dude is a freaking missile combined with a tank, combined with a bowling ball of butcher knives. Like, he is a giant. He is a massive, 6'1", 220. DJ said he's 6% body fat. You just watch defenders bounce off of him. He's got explosiveness. Like, he runs in the 4.4s in Indy next week. That dude's in the first round, and he very well could end up being their guy at 22. But then you go behind that, you got Cam Scattaboo, who, if he runs in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s, you're talking about a guy that is going to work his way in the second round. Yeah. You got Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, more of that athlete. Travion Henderson, you saw the national championship game and what he and Judkins were doing. Henderson looks like Bucky Irving. Reminds me of Bucky Irving in Tampa, just that explosive. So that's a deep class.
It is. Yeah. But you have to get somebody.
They're going to take one of those guys.
They are. So you think how serious do you think they are if the right guy's there, that they'll do it in the first round? You don't think?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, think about what could be available to them, right? Like, we talked about, like, with defensive end. If they've, the edge, look, Joey, I don't know what's going to happen there. I just can't imagine him on this team at 36
I'm here in San Francisco. I'm hearing that, playing with his brother. So I think those days in LA, it might be done for him as a Charger.
So if you got one of these edges, if Michael Williams slides, if Mike Green slides, James Pierce from Tennessee, like, if they end up sliding, then that's incredible value there, And then you go, like we said, defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman. We already went through all those guys. You go to corner, you got Barron, who is really a nickel. And we've seen what happened with Cooper DeJean and what happened with Brian Branch and how those guys that are primarily nickel slide. You don't think if we redrafted Cooper DeJean's getting drafted in the first round, the top 25, like Brian Branch, you don't think he's getting drafted in the top 20 if they get a chance to redo this? So, and look, we got Derwin playing big nickel here. So whether or not that lines up, but I would assume those guys can play outside. So that's an interesting one, right? And then we already talked about the running backs. What do you do if Ashton Genty or Amari and Hampton are within reach? And then what happens if T-Mac, if T. McMillan from Arizona, Servite guy from here in Southern California, we talked about his profile, 6'5", 212, blazing fast, crazy contested catch rate. Think about that guy at the X. You've got that possibility. Just going through all the positions here. We already talked about tight end, Colston Loveland sitting there. How do you not take a guy that DJ compared to Travis Kelce? And then interior lineman, Tyler Booker. Again, I keep referencing DJ because he's on the broadcast and he's the number one draft analyst in the NFL. So it's great that we have him as a resource. He said what was his quote? He said someone that he talked to at Alabama said J.C. Latham should pay Tyler Booker half of his salary for getting drafted number 6 overall, because being that guard next to Latham basically is why he was so dominant, that Booker was the leader of that offensive line at Alabama, that he's just that kind of alpha. You plug him next to Joe Alton now, like the positions of need for the Chargers are deep, and so they're going to get a good player there at 22. I just don't, I don't know what direction it is, but I feel like whichever one and you know what? I bring up Tyler Booker just to say, if we're doing the draft party, last year I was at Topgolf when we did the draft party and they drafted Joe Alt, and everyone was like, "Oh, Malik Neighbors," and it's like, how did that play out? And it's like if they draft Tyler Booker, just think about the 52% pressure rate that Justin Herbert was under against the Houston Texans and the inability to get anything going offensively, if that's what the pick is. Don't freak out. If it's a defensive tackle, think about the Super Bowl and what it looked like with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams for the Eagles and how they absolutely wrecked the Chiefs. And that's why it would go that direction. So, yes, we all like the idea of Ashton Genty. We all like the idea of T-Mac. We all like the idea of Colston Loveland. But up front is kind of where
you build in the trenches.
Yes, if they decided to do that. All right, you want to go through some of these real quick? How many O-linemen did the Bolts? Okay, so a lot of these we already got to. This is Angel. How many O-linemen did the Bolts sign in free agency? How many D-linemen did they take in the draft? So I feel like we kind of went through that, right? I think, you could see a center guard, maybe Ryan Kelly, Zeitler, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries. Which Michigan player is more likely to get drafted by the Chargers, Kenneth Grant or Colston Loveland? So you got the D-tackle versus the tight end. Both really deep positions. I'll put it to you, Lo. Kenneth Grant is a freak. I mean, a freak. He is a 340-pound nose that you can kick outside if you want on pass rushing downs, and he's going to get home. So you got that versus a tight end that's being compared to Travis Kelce. What do you want to do?
Well, I think it's Kenneth, no question, because you talk about building in the trenches. Now you're talking about building that wall, but these guys aren't going to be there. But if you said perfect dream list, absolutely, it would be the D-line, because you got to build a wall and you got to stop the run, because we've seen that the run game, it's back in the NFL.
Should the Chargers double dip it and at guard through the free agency and the draft? Do you think the Chargers will sign a center or draft a center? Love what you guys do. Bolt up. I know you're kind of advocating for it, Lo. Double dip, right?
Oh, without a doubt. I think without a doubt they will fix the offensive line in free agency, because they'll be able to say, look, we're trying to win now. I think there's free agency there, but I think defensive line, because of the fact you think about who's more athletic. Defensive line are usually more athletic. They're going to have to run more. So you want a young, fresh legs that's young, strong, and physical. So I think D-line will be where they go in the draft, and I think they'll get the offensive line better in free agency.
Yeah, I'm looking at the centers. I know it's not a deep center class, at least according to DJ in the draft. So you've got the kid from North Dakota State, Gray Zabel, who had a really good, he's kind of become this year's Graham Barton, if you remember, from Duke, who was a guard, but a lot of people are like, oh, you can play center all day. You can be your center for the next decade. So Gray Zabel's a possibility with that first round pick. Outside of that, like last year was a center draft. Last year was deep. I remember talking to Nick Hardwick about he liked a lot of guys that he was looking at. And look, it just sometimes it lines up when you're on the clock. Sometimes it doesn't. This year, I don't believe it's anywhere near as deep. So you'd be taking on a project or swinging, trying to hit something there that maybe isn't necessarily as high on your board later in the draft. I'm looking at the free agents. You got Drew Dahlman, as I kind of read, any team deploys an outside zone rushing scheme, which the Chargers don't. They're gap power. So I don't know how that sort of how that equates to what they're looking for. But I think Ryan Kelly would kind of be the guy. It's just the injury concerns, the age concerns, and it's a guy that's thinking about retiring. So that's kind of what you gotta worry about there in terms of a a center ahead of Bradley Bozeman, a guy that, like we said, they really like. But guard, we already kind of went through that.
And think about this real quick. Now, Money, you would have to, you guarantee you'll probably agree with this. If you think about more impact players that over the years, and not saying offense, you can, I played with a great offensive tackle, Willie Rofe. You saw this year what, Alt did, which is great. But usually defensive players, defensive line, outside pass rushers, because athletically they have more of an opportunity as young guys to impact the game because it's athletically, offensive line is more physical, and it's usually it takes time for them to grow into their bodies.
Right. Yeah. And that's, Alt is just a freak. He's an exception to the rule. The fact that guy gets dropped in as a rookie and becomes one of the 5 best right tackles in the NFL, it just doesn't happen like that.
No.
Now look, the Chargers did it twice. They got Rashawn Slater. And his rookie year, he was one of the 5 best left tackles in the NFL. Like, that's how good he was, and that's how good Joe Alt is. So at least that problem is solved. And I'm sure we've heard Coach Harbaugh say it repeatedly, tip of the spear. It all starts with what other position? You remember what he said at the owners' meeting? What other position doesn't rely on anyone, but every other position relies on to be successful? Offensive line.
Yep.
So you would assume it's going to be addressed. All right, this is from Derek. Love the show. Any news on whether Jesse Minter will be staying with the team or exploring other head coaching positions? What do you think will happen? Low. So that was for me. Jesse Minter staying with the team. All the coaching spots are full. You can't take him away to be a DC because he's already a DC. So it would just have been a head coaching opportunity. So that's not happening. For Lorenzo, what did the early offseason look like for you as a player? Did you take time away, or were you right back prepping for next season as soon as the playoffs ending? He's from Alberta, Canada. Bolts content like yours helps me get through these long winters. Appreciate you, Derek. And hey, and also Derek, as much as I appreciate that, F you on Friday, right? USA, 4 nations. 4 nations, baby.
I like that. I watched that. Woo, I saw that. That was nice, Money. How about that hockey game the other day?
So good, man.
So good. Wasn't that awesome to just watch just teams go at? That's sports. Just there's 2 guys.
Oh, I know you love it, though.
Money. I was like, let me go out there, nice, baby. Put it in ice.
So I was in real quick. I'll get this real quick.
Please,
I was in Alabama calling the game. Drive back from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham. Go to the bar in my hotel for dinner because it's a little late and I needed to put some food in my belly, my fat belly. And as I sit at the bar, there's like 4 TVs. One's got like Mississippi State, Arkansas game on or something. The other one's like Arkansas State versus something else. And I say to the bartender, I'm like, hey man, and there's 3 people sitting. So it's a rectangular bar. I'm sitting here by myself. This side's got 2 couples, guy and a gal, guy and a gal. This side's got 3 people, 2 guys and a gal. And I say to the bartender, I'm like, hey, man, hockey game's about to start. Would you mind putting it on ABC? Could I just get it on one of these TVs? I get it. It's SEC country. I don't want to take anything. But if you could just point me to one of the TVs, wherever, I'll go sit wherever. I'd really like to watch. He's like, yeah, no problem, man. We'll put it on right here. So we put it on. National anthems. They're booing the national anthem. I look to my right, and I see this guy go, is that somebody booing a damn national anthem over there? And I was like, oh, yeah. It's like, it's the hockey game. It's the 4 nations game. He's like, hockey? What are you talking about? And I just kind of say, oh, yeah, it's 4 nations. It's Finland. It's Sweden. It's USA and Canada. And they play each other. And he comes, kind of walks over. He
comes over by you? This is good because he hears them boom. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. So he sits down. And then all of a sudden, puck drops. Matthew Tkachuk, come up. And he's like, whoa. And then all of a sudden, the people over here, they come over and they're watching. And they're just like, what's this? I was like, I guess Team USA didn't like that, man. They didn't like him booing the anthem. They're like, oh, damn, I don't like it either. So, all of a sudden, we got all these people that have never watched hockey before in their life. And the bartender was like, I don't think we've ever had a hockey on in here, man. I'm going to be honest with you. And I was like, here we go, man. We're partying. We're partying for the flag. Let's for Old Glory, red, white, and blue. And we all just kind of sat around. Everybody moved to that side. And
is that right? So all the TVs, forget SEC basketball, they all come over there, buy you money. They want to watch the hockey game. Baby, it's my basketball season.
Right. 9, I think it was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us all lined up right there just watching it. And I was like,
that's awesome. That was an awesome game. But now the offseason, man, I took a couple of days off, a week off or so, but I was right back training. You especially after you're watching the Super Bowl, watching the guys that you played against, watching guys you dominate against, watching guys that beat your butt, and you're like, I got to go ahead and start training. I want to make sure that I'm not the one. So I really never took a lot of time off, and then toward you get closer to the season, you even intensify even more.
Yeah, look, you can speak to it. I can't. I'm a weakling. I wear size 30 jeans, so whatever. So, yeah, here we go. Bet online. Want to mention this odds for USA game? Will there be a fight in the first minute? Plus 1,000 to 5,000. So check that out from our friends over at Bet Online if you're into that. Let's see. We already did that one. If Mack decides to not come back, will we try to keep Bosa around a little longer? It's a good question because certainly the edge position. What do you think, Lo? The edge position gets pretty darn thin if somehow
Bosa gets hurt.
Khalil Mack signs somewhere else.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, here's what you have to do, and it's you have to realize you got to cut your ties. Bosa's been great. He might come back and retire a Charger because what he's done. This guy is freaking unbelievable pass rusher and still plays at a very high level. Injuries has been the Achilles heel. You can't afford to bring him back because if you lose Mack, if you don't have Mack, you got to go say, hey, look, I got to have someone that's durable. I got to have someone that's going to be able to play. I know this Joey Bosa. I know if he's on the field, if he's well, he's hell, and he's a game changer, game wrecker. But you can't afford to take that chance. Without a doubt, I don't think Bosa will be back next year.
Yeah, to me, it's up to him. It's going to be up to him because they're going to ask him to take a pay cut for the second consecutive year. And I think it's up to he and his agent to figure out what his market value is outside of here. So it's like, I think if it were up to him, if Khalil were coming back, those two have forged such a strong bond. I think he'd like to come back. And then I think it's a matter of how can I make this work for this team versus I'm probably looking at my last potentially big contract. How do I value the total number versus being comfortable? And so to me, that it's
you think it'd be up to him.
I think a lot of people are making it out to be simple, like, oh, they'll just cut him. And it's like, I don't think it's that simple. I think Joey's, having been around him as long as I have, he's a different bird, man. He's just
great guy.
I've heard him say it. He's a great dude. I love, he's very thoughtful. He's funny. He's engaging. Teammates love him. He really, I hate that his body's betrayed him because he cares, man. When he tore that groin early in the season, he was, he's crying. Like that's how upset he was. He felt so good about this year and what he was going to be able to do with Khalil and this defense. He was so freaking jacked about what he thought he could do in this defense. So like all that stuff makes me want to keep him around. And so I think it's just a matter of, hey, this is kind of all the money that we've paid you and this is the availability. Like, can we figure out? And at the same time, we understand if you want to go get more, if someone's willing to take a chance and maybe they're going to do things differently and you can stay at whatever, we get it. But I think it's on Joey is kind of what I'm thinking. Timothy from Vista, who do you think the Chargers need in the NFL draft? Should be to get closer to the Super Bowl. I think we kind of went through that, Timothy, but thank you for the question. Time to move on from Joey. Yep, just kind of got through that. Take on the Chargers, possibly targeting Trey Smith. So that's BT. We kind of got into that low. I think if Robert Hunt got $20 million last year as a middle of the road free agent from the Dolphins, you're probably talking about $25 million for Trey Smith, and I just don't see him doing it. I think they're more likely to go the Zeitler route, which will be a third of that for a year, and see if they can figure something out. That'd be my guess.
Do you trade for a Debo? Do you as a gimmick player?
No way. Not, at least I don't. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way in case they do.
No.
But to me, it's, and I said the Dolphins. He was a Dolphin. He signed with the Panthers for all that money. Robert Hunt, that is. No, it's too hard, man. It's too gnarly of a game to be giving him 5-6 carries at running back. And that's where his value is, if he's not taking any, and I don't, to me, it's not worth it. It's not, I don't want to bring that risk on, just the amount of injuries he's taken and what his value is. You know what I mean? Like his value is you've got to hand him the ball in the backfield for it to be worth the amount of money that he's making. It's not worth it to just have him out there running routes.
If he's cut, what does he fit? Could he fit this type of offense? Or because he's not a true number one. He's not a guy that can beat man coverage. He's not. He's just still.
That's what I mean. So it's kind of one of those. In order to do what he does best, you bring in the not even possibility, but the likelihood that he's going to get hurt. and like to me, that's just too much of a risk on the Debo front. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, and then I think I said it right on Trey Smith, just a little too rich. Yeah. What do you think would be the most realistic scenario as to who the Chargers end up with? Wide receiver, tight end, running back after free agency and the draft, and what would be your dream scenario? Well, for me, dream scenario would be Ashton Genty running back. And I'm just trying to be look. Dream scenario: Ashton Genty running back, T. Higgins wide receiver, and and then tight end. I'm going to be realistic. If you take Genty, you're not getting Colston Loveland or Trey Warren. So I'll just go. I like Mason Taylor. That would be dream. Yeah, you get Genty in the first, Taylor in the second, and T. Higgins in free agency would be the dream. What's realistic? Genty ain't going to be there. He ain't going to get past the Steelers at 20. But you could trade up. If he starts sliding, you might be able to trade up to go get him. So let's just say realistically, instead of like dream scenario, let's just say, Amari and Hampton at 22. If they're going to franchise T. Higgins, Davante Adams at wide receiver, and then same deal, Mason Taylor at tight end, I guess would be kind of where I would go.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think Davante Adams, I think it's realistic. I'm not going to go dream of this. Realistically, you get Davante Adams because he's going to get cut. He's going to get released. He is a true number one. Find a way to get that guy, bring him in. Whoever it is, you got to get the best available running back at 20. You got to get the best available running back at 22. You have to get a guy that's going to be able to carry the ball and give you that game-changing experience, and not just the 3 yards. You need a guy that can change the game. You don't have it in that running back position right now. So that's mine.
Yeah, and I'll say, and I really want JK back. I do.
Oh, you want? I like Dobbins.
Yeah, and he is a monster in pass pro. So that's got to happen. I shouldn't say got to happen. That's something that I would really like to see happen. So, yeah. All right. That's nearly an hour, Lo. We knocked it out.
Yeah, that was quick. So, didn't feel it.
No, well, it's been a while. And our apologies for being away. We'll be back again next week. I'll be out in Indy at the Combine. So a lot of this will come into will come into focus a little bit more. I'll have an opportunity as my college basketball schedule is upon me to really dig in. Before I get to the Combine, I'll dig in a lot deeper, and I'll be able to get these position groups a little bit deeper through the draft. I'm kind of just through about 2 rounds, maybe scratching the 3rd round on a handful of these positions. So of need. I'm not the draft expert. Instead, we just try to bring people on to talk about that stuff, or I repurpose the things that they've told me for you folks that are listening. So we appreciate that. Keep the questions and comments coming on the YouTube there. We love pulling those, or on the Reddit. Keep downloading and reviewing and liking if you don't mind, and passing it along, because we're back, and we'll be back now. And see you in Brazil, September 5th, Lo.
There we go.
How about that announcement? So very excited about it. I love the international games. Loved going to Mexico City. Loved going to London. And now very excited to go to Sao Paulo, Brazil, September 5th. Yeah, Thursday will be the kickoff with the Eagles. And then just like last year when the Eagles and Packers played in Brazil, the following night after that Chiefs-Lions game, or Chiefs-Ravens game, we'll be doing that Friday night, I think 4 hours ahead of us here, Pacific time. So it'll probably be a primetime affair here on the Pacific time zone where we are. And don't know who the opponent will be. If I had to handicap it, I could see maybe a rematch of the wild card round against Houston, because the Chargers are hosting, so it's their home opponents. They host the Colts.
I'd love that.
They host the Texans. I could see that maybe. I could, the Chargers played the Chiefs in Mexico City, so they are certainly not adverse to doing an international game with a division opponent. And I think of all the division opponents, the one that would probably make them the most sense, I think, would be the Raiders. I think the fact you have to go, if I were the Chargers, I'd be like, hey man, it's already a home field advantage for the Broncos. We got to go to Mile High and play in the altitude. You can't negate our home field advantage in LA by sending both of us down to Brazil. And, there's got to be some some equity there. Last year, there were more powder blues in Las Vegas in Week 18 than there were Raider fans, so I got no issue there if you take the Raider game away from here. So that'd be my guess. That would be 1 and 1A, I think. If I had to put some bet online odds on it, I would say it's one of those three: Raiders, Broncos, or Texans would be my guess, with maybe the Texans as the favorite.
There we go, man. Shoot, well, I can't wait to get to Brazil with you. We have to do it from Brazil, baby. Let's go,
baby. On
that
plane, man. Let's get you on that plane. All right, everybody. Appreciate you checking us out. Big thanks to Lindsay for getting this thing put together. And again, sorry I've been dragging ass a little bit in getting this thing going, but we'll be back and we'll be live from the Combine next week.
Cheers. You're the best, Money.